All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's start that discussion. We're calling it the Youth View. They talk about all matters, politics, and everything in between there because they form 75% of the population anyway, so the decision they make is crucial. But do they even exist as a voting bloc? Where is the unity of purpose from the young people? What do they hear now that the political drumbeats are sounding? Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. That's the hashtag we're using for now. Let me introduce my guest real quick, beginning from my right. Steve Biko is here, an entrepreneur. Thank you so much for making time, Steve. Pleasure. We have Ruth Ambogo, youth policy expert. Asante sana for making time as well. It's been a while since you're here.
5 years.
Good to see you. And we have Rebecca Morad-Gilo, youth leader, Strugglers Movement.
Well.
Thank you for coming through. Steve, I'll start with you. And we see a lot of stuff going on in the dailies. Yeah, there's a push for County 48 kicks up. IBC is struggling to get their numbers. DP Ruto 135 rallies in 30 days. In 1 month, Deputy President William Ruto has visited 20 counties as he plans to reach the constitutional requirement. Are you hearing anything new from these politicians? Is there anything exciting that makes you look forward to 2022 that could possibly change the lives of the young people?
Unfortunately, no. There's a lot happening, but the one thing that is actually constant is that whatever we've been discussing since 1963 is the same thing we're still discussing now. Elect me, I'll bring water. Elect me, I'll bring electricity. Elect me, I'll bring you jobs. It's quite unfortunate when the second man in command in the country lies openly and to the public, and the media does not actually fact check and actually hold him accountable. The reason why evil is actually prospering is because no one is strong enough to actually stop it and ask, where are you going? And holding politicians accountable. We are not doing that. So one, there's nothing that is new. Two, there's nothing that is actually appealing and exciting. And to just give you good data to show that is actually look at how IBC has performed in terms of voter registration. We've actually had the most expensive voter registration process in the world. 1.2 billion to register 1 million voters. No one is actually keen or interested, and that is actually the saddest reality in our Kenyan politics.
Yeah. Ruth, anything exciting?
There's a lot that is exciting, especially I feel like we are in a new season. I feel like Kenya is at a rebirth. The mere fact that this panel is full of 4 young people, all of them born, I want to believe, before 1994, thereabout, or 1993, 92. So we are talking about a very young panel of young people who are articulating issues affecting young people, and not just from a point of view of complaining, but from a point of view of offering solutions. Yeah. So I do believe that as a country, we are experiencing a new energy. We are experiencing new faces. We are experiencing new leadership. We are going to experience the youngest government in 2022, where a majority, and I want to believe probably 75% of that government is going to be filled with young people who are bold, authoritative, young people who have experienced what it takes and what it means to struggle to try and deliver your country. A lot of young people run businesses in this country. In fact, it is young people that have kept this country going ever since 1963, when we got our independence. Presently, as it stands, young people are presently owning 99% of businesses across the country. Yeah. And in fact, this happened when COVID-19 came, when young people realized that we had to adjust. If there is a generation that is resilient, it is the generation that was born in 1993. Yeah. The generation that is 27 years and above, and many of them are very vocal leaders. Okay. Just the other day, a celebration was held at a hotel called Royal Tulip, Canaan, and it was very symbolic. It looked like a very normal gathering of young people who are just, out there to celebrate one of their own, and this one of their own who happened to be me, for the appointment that I had just been given to serve at the office of the incoming First Lady, Mama Ida Odinga. And it looked as if, and I would want to say incoming from a biased point of view, but I don't think it is biased anymore, because when we look at the kind of policies that this lady has been championing ever since, the husband began to fight for the liberation of this country, they are policies that are transforming the lives of young people. I speak from a point of information when I say that the generation that we are talking about that was born in 1993, I happen to be one of them. They are all turning 27 this year. So we are witnessing a country that will be filled with leaders who were born in 1993.
Okay.
Something beautiful happened in 1993. Okay. I do not know what it is, but what I know is that in the room where we celebrated my appointment, the room was called the Senate, and you are about 70 young people, and all of them were my age mates.
Okay.
All of them
we'll
are holding, let me just finish. All of them are young people who are doing projects on the ground.
Okay.
All of them are young people who are entrenched in agriculture, trying to help young people. You know, some of them are in the agriculture sector, such as Lon Felix, trying to assist young people get into agriculture. We have a lady there called Maureen, who is presently steering policy. We had a lot of, we had a room that was full of young people born in 1993 who are all doing great things out there.
All right.
So what I'm saying is that I'm speaking hope, and I'm not going to stand with anybody who says that as a country we have lost it. We haven't lost it. There is hope, and I believe that something special must have happened last evening that delivered us to the place where we would say that indeed it is a new dawn and the day has broken.
Steve disagrees, but I'll come to Steve in just a bit. Rebecca, are you hearing anything that is exciting for a young generation like what Ruth is saying, that there's hope now, there's new refreshed energy?
Yeah, there is fresh energy. 23-year-old sitting here, fresh energy, indeed, I believe. And I believe from the strugglers movement point of view, we have 2 million people since we launched a few weeks ago, reaching out. And these are young people who want to change the struggle of political, economic, social and environmental crisis in this country. Looking back right now, and I see the papers, 135 rallies in 30 days. We were discussing earlier, and I was telling you, it is not a popularity contest. Elections are not a popularity contest. And I believe that the 2 million and more who are going to join us very soon are going to see that for a presidential rally, an MCA, a governor, a senator, an MP, we want to see change. We want to see change, especially with this young generation. We want to see people whereby we will be delivered from the shackles of these struggles that we're having. We want to work hard and be delivered from these shackles. We don't want to have an endless cycle. We want to end the struggle. That's why I believe that there's something exciting, especially for our generation.
How are you going to end this struggle?
First of all, activism. We are activists, majority of us. We want to call out the current government, and the incoming government, we want to influence the decisions. I believe in politics, we don't live in isolation. You cannot thrive in politics in isolation. That's why we come in for people who want to create a voice, to effect change. We want to talk about these policies, as Ruth was talking about, policies, monetary policies. We want to talk about ASOL's region, whereby we can put in reduce taxes there so that more people can invest in such regions, or even spread out employment, not to concentrate in urban areas, but also in rural areas.
But do you have a requirement where everybody who's joined your team of the strugglers movement are registered voters to begin with? Because then they can't make a decision. If IEBC was targeting 6 million people, they only got 1.4 million. There's a whole more than 5 million young people who would have tilted the politics of the scene, who simply did not take any voter's card. So how do they change it? If the presidential poll was decided by about 8 billion people, 5 million today have not taken a voter's card. How then do they influence the decisions of the government?
First of all, it is so sad that young people did not turn up, but as strugglers movement, we followed the due process. First of all, we went to IEBC, requested for voter apathy and extension of registration a week ago, true? So after doing so, we continued seeking and talking to young people. I did from my social media platforms because I was unavailable on the ground. But my people, my fellow strugglers, went to the ground from different wards around the country, talking to people, talking to the youths, telling them how important being a registered voter is, and the change that you can effect by just that registration, by being a registered voter. That is what we do. And trust you me, for the 2 million members who are members of Strugglers Movement, they indeed are registered voters.
Okay.
Yes.
Steve, there's Kent here on Twitter says the youth may be 75% of the country's population, but that is not the figure that will vote. Politics is an industry, and the gatekeepers ni wale, same old wazees.
I agree. First and foremost, I'm very disappointed with the panelist I'm sitting with, because I believe in numbers. One, the young people in this country do not own any business. That is a fact. The kind of businesses that young people own cannot actually be worth to be discussed in a newspaper, because the old generation have refused to hand over. That is one. If we look at the numbers of how many Kenyans own shares at the stock market, for example, or how many Kenyans own factories in the manufacturing sector, or how many Kenyans own ranches and big farms, or how many Kenyans own import or export businesses, let me tell you, very few of them are young people. And that is a sad reality. I love the hope and the gusto that I'm hearing, but unfortunately, the only way to bring change is by actually understanding the truth, by going back to the basics and being able to stand and say, this is what the problem is and this is the solution. Young people, we are 80% in terms of numbers. We are very many of us, but we're actually disillusioned, we're discouraged, and that is why IEBC had a problem in actually meeting the target. The reason why her movement seems to resonate with the young people is because all of us are struggling. And we, you know, misery loves company, so we seem to coalesce around an issue that actually will appeal to me. And that is why the movement can actually attract more people than IEBC can. And I would like to challenge her to actually push for an extension so that young people can actually be able to register. Because the only way we are going to bring change is to be able to connect politics and our lives. We need to understand that the price of maize flour, the price of bread, the price of petrol is actually connected to my MP, is actually connected to my senator, is actually connected to the CS in charge of energy and things like that. So that connecting aspect is lacking. Okay. And why is it lacking? It's because as young people, we do not have the time to sit down and put one dot and next, because I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to find ways to pay for my children's school fees. I'm trying to find ways to pay for my rent. I'm trying to find ways to be able to move from Nairobi back to the village because I cannot afford to survive. When you look at the businesses young people own, we are surviving hand to mouth in the informal sector. True business, and I'm talking about real honest business, I can be able to tell you there are very few young Kenyans who own it. And if you look at the history, they're connected to someone in the political circle, or their family is actually very powerful. And that is a sad reality. I love the energy that I'm seeing. Yeah. I love the hope. But for me to be able to sell hope, I need to understand the reality on the ground.
Okay.
Yes.
Ruth?
First of all, I will start with where he has just stopped.
Yeah.
By saying that their families, you know, people who own big businesses are probably connected to families that are powerful. There is nobody who is powerful than the other in this country. According to our constitution, we are all equal before the law. And I can tell you for sure that Trevor Ombija, if today, for instance, I walk out of this place and somebody decides to molest me or harass me or do something that would put me in harm's way, I will walk to the police station and I will record a statement and that particular person will be arrested. I have done that before in the past and it has worked. When I was on the campaign trail, and I say was because I stepped out of the race for Vihiga County woman representative, I saw a lot of bad things. I saw a lot of ugly things that would discourage any young person from running for a political seat, but I was not discouraged. What did I see as a young person and a young woman who wanted to be the first youngest woman representative at the age of 27? I witnessed violence against myself from my political opponent, who is the current woman representative. I saw people being paid to rape people within my campaign team, and I still stood strong. I saw myself, and it is not about just seeing. These are things that happened to me. In the Matungu by-election that was delivered by young people, and these young people were Senator Cleophas Malala, Kakamega County, and myself, and Bishop Titus Kamala, because we were the three people that led to the victory of Matungu. I remember people said at that particular point that these young people are violent. They said that these young people are vigorous. They said that these young people are murderers. That is what they said. What they did not know is that the reality on the ground was, and this is the unreported truth, that there was a lot of bloodshed in Matungu that nobody reported about. And here I blame the media, that when blood is being shed in particular parts of the country, where the media tends to focus its attention, and I'm sorry to say this, the media tends to focus its attention on particular, and Citizen TV, by the way, is an exclusion of the media when I say the media. Why I say the media is because, let's say, for example, take a case study of 2017, when there was an alleged swearing-in process that was going on. I remember that 5 years ago, which was the last time I was here on Citizen TV, I sat right there at the waiting area, waiting to come and analyze politics and tell Kenyans that indeed we are going to Canaan. What happened? 5 minutes before I went on air to tell Kenyans that we are going to Canaan and indeed the dream is here, that Kenya is going to be delivered, Citizen TV was shut down. And I said, you know what? The revolution will be televised. As of yesterday, young people on Twitter were trending a hashtag called "The Struggle is Real" across the world. I am sure she's not aware that globally on Facebook, the #1 trending hashtag was "The Struggle is Real." The #2 trending hashtag on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, when the deep state and the big families and the powerful, the people you call powerful, were sitting down on big tables, round tables, dividing the cake for themselves. Young people were on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, and a revolution was slowly televised.
But is that enough?
It is.
On Twitter?
It is.
The action has to be on the
ground. It is more than enough. Do you know why I tell you it is more than enough? Revolutions are what have delivered some of the greatest democracies in this world. Kenya stands as one of the greatest democracies in this world.
Okay.
Yesterday, I was at a meeting at Royal Tulip, Canaan, which is literally 5 minutes away from this place. I met some young people, and for some strange reason, I could not tell whether they were Kenyans or they were not. I began talking to them about how, you know, Nelson Mandela was the greatest president that ever lived, followed by the enigma Raila Odinga, and there was a whole debate of these young people saying, and we all sounded the same. The language was the same. There was no accent. We spoke one language. And the debate was heated between whether Nelson Mandela, there was a competition of 3 young people, myself, a lady, and a gentleman.
Yeah.
And the debate was, who are the greatest presidents that have ever existed and have ever served ever since democracy, the concept of democracy was birthed? The debate was between whether it was #1, Nelson Mandela, #2, Raila Odinga, and #3, the infamous Robert Mugabe. Can I tell you how the discussions went?
Yeah.
I thought we were all Kenyans. It so happened that the one who was saying that Raila Odinga is the greatest democratic or leader that has ever existed was myself, who is a Kenyan. The person who kept insisting that Nelson Mandela is the greatest leader that has ever, you know, served in this world was a South African. I found out after he said Nelson Mandela. The one who defended Robert Mugabe was a Zambian young man. And it was a competition of ideas to try and see how did these people become who they are and what contributions did they make to transform their countries. And it also, the debate extended to where we are as a country. And this is why I say, indeed, there is a new dawn that happened yesterday. Allow me to finish, please. Just allow me to finish, because I need to talk about how the Kenyatas enter into this equation, because remember, they are the ones who led us to independence. They developed a strategic system that was supposed to manage this country for years. There was a blueprint that was established in 1963 that was supposed to govern this country for 100 years. We had a proper blueprint for development. You know, we had a lot of papers, sessional paper 93, that discussed how the country was supposed to be developed. We were talking about ICT, we were talking about young people in leadership, we were talking about all these beautiful things that we are now witnessing in the Uhuru Kenyatta administration. Let me tell you that there was a paper that was developed during the Kibaki administration that has since been implemented while Kenyans were silent, being swindled around by sideshows, vipindi and drama. What was that paper that has led Kenya to where we are today? Vision 2030, which shall be achieved in the next few years from now. In the next 9 years, Vision 2030 shall be completed. Why do I say so? Vision 2030 sought to achieve the following items. #1, Trevor, we were seeking to ensure that Kenya becomes the hub of information and technology. Do you know that the businesses that are run in this country on information and technology are owned by, majority of them are owned by young people? I understand that where this young man is coming from is a community where there were billionaires and big families. That is why he keeps talking about the big families. The Atuolis of the world, the Mudavadis of the world, those big families that he talks about. I want to believe that he probably comes from one of those big families. But I don't think Biko is a big family.
Trevor.
So allow me to continue.
I'll allow you.
ICT was a component. Number two, we were talking about entrenching of young people.
Forget about the Vision 2030.
We were talking about entrenching of young people.
Ruth,
let's focus our discussion back where we were. Biko, there's a direct response from you.
First, I apologize. Western Kenya is not known for billionaires or millionaires. If anything, Western Kenya is one region of this country that's blessed with beautiful environment for agriculture, but we're the most poorest in the country. I think the issue that we need to debate and the issue we need to look at is, do the youth believe in the political promises that we're actually hearing right now? It's not about what the Kenyattas have done or not. It's not about, you see, for Ruth to speak the way she's speaking, she's a beneficiary of the system.
Really? Tell me how.
You just said you were appointed to Mama.
Exactly.
You know how
she's an apologist.
No, let
me finish.
I am an apologist.
She's an apologist because when if we are to look at why her movement has actually sprouted and actually gained traction in less than a month, you need to understand that young people are actually struggling to put food on the table. Young people are struggling to have one meal a day.
Yeah.
If you see a young person praising the current administration or talking positively about them, it's because they're benefiting in one way. And at the beginning of this discussion, I said, why evil thrives is because no one is strong enough to stand before it and say, where are you going? For me, I need to look at how can the youth be able to participate in the political discourse to actually make a difference come the next general election. And one of the key ways is for the young people to actually register as voters, demand for the extension of this, and actually deliberately be able to just take time and try and hold every single leader accountable. Because as a country, we are at the baseline an agrarian economy. But if you look at our agriculture, if you look at our manufacturing, if you look at our production, if you look at export and import businesses, we're not doing very well. And if this aspect is controlled by the few 1% of this country, where are the young people? I would like her to actually mention for me great businesses of integrity, tax-paying, owned by young people of my generation without any support from either political connections, without any support from having been knowing someone or actually working with the administration.
Okay. Let me bring in Rebecca first. Rebecca has been quite quiet on this.
Yeah.
Yes.
First of all, Biko, you're welcome to join the strugglers movement. I can see you're very passionate about the struggle. The struggle is indeed real. And secondly, the youths own almost 90% of small, medium enterprises in this country. And that is what makes the economy grow. Forget about these big factories, forget about these big industries. We're not for that. But these small, medium enterprises in this country, they're owned by us, the youths. And for us to complain about not having the proper policies to be able to grow our businesses is why we are in lobbying, why we want to speak out, why people like Ruth, people like I would want to run for office, because we want to effect change. We want to see laws. We don't want to be given laws on SMEs from secondary bases and from secondary sources. We want to have proper laws that will define SMEs, and we want to have maybe geographical distributions where taxes will not, areas like Wajir, we cannot have Nairobi and Wajir having in the same tax bracket. I hope you're getting me.
Yes.
We don't want to be taxed in the same way. We want industries being built there, or small medium enterprises which will be mostly owned by youths in that area to have favorable tax environment rather than these big industries. Because at the end of the day, at 23, I cannot have a big industry. I cannot have $1 million to be able to run my business, but my 50,000 will be able to start a small business that I can easily manage. We don't want to start from dreams. We want to be practical about this. We want to face a reality. We don't want just to imagine. And secondly, complaining about how people having millionaires running businesses is not a practical example of what we the youth are fighting for right now. They have their millions, but we want to make ours from struggling and growing to end this struggle of being poor or living hand to mouth. We want to end that struggle, not because of noise, but because of a purposeful voice.
Does the environment allow you to end that struggle?
The environment will allow us, because we are there and we want to effect those policy changes. Will allow us. We will. One thing about this generation, we are sensitive on what affects us. We don't want to be told what to do. So we will push for those policies to be changed.
Okay, let me hear some solutions. So jobs. We've talked about jobs, education, health, business, agriculture. Let's start with the jobs part. There's been 4 million jobs promised in one administration, 4 cabinet positions, ODM on this other side, 100 billion shillings for youth SMEs, the ones you're talking about. Before this, there was 1.5 million jobs that were promised. Did we achieve that?
We did not.
So what makes you think we're going to achieve the 4 million?
First of all these promises were just politicians singing to the tune of the people so that we can dance. That is for a fact, let's be honest.
Okay.
They just wanted to speak so that we can vote for them. They're just making noise, for lack of proper term. They're just making noise.
Okay.
First, if we want to create jobs, let's look at policies where, let's say in some areas, like Germany, which has the most favorable youth policies in the country, it's easy to fire and hire. True or not true? True. Sometimes it helps. It might be bad on the side, but it helps as well because we have more people moving. We don't have people stagnant in a position. Number 2, we have proper tax paying processes.
Yeah.
In our country, people with KRA will sing, give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. But in other countries, there are proper processes that are employed. These are things that will help enhance employment. Number 3, let's put away with obsolete technology. Yeah. As young people, technology is our thing. Personally, I'd walk around a computer, I'd walk around a laptop, I'd walk around machines without struggling, as opposed to people who are maybe 10 years older than me. That is our thing. Let us put in policies whereby if I'm flying a drone, I don't need to pay over 100,000 to be allowed to fly a drone. If I'm going to produce something, a new technology, invent something, let me have an easier way of patenting it and putting it into the market, rather than just being told, you need to go to this office, this office, this office.
Okay.
I was joking with my friends when I was telling them, if IEBC voter registration was easily done over the phone, trust you me, we'd have surpassed the target.
Okay.
But we don't want to move towards that direction because we still want to sit back and be rigid about it.
Okay, but also as a young person yourself, KRA that you've just mentioned collects taxes from 2 million people. Right now, there are 19.6 million registered voters. Most of them are youth. They are surviving, but they're not paying taxes.
Because they're struggling. They're struggling, number one, because first of all, probably I've filed nil returns all through my campus.
But you've made some money.
But I've paid some money in other forms of taxes. But if we look back, what does KRA do that they don't do right? What does it do? We talk about, it boils down to how the politics of just the country. We look back and see that these people were not just properly given jobs. People were appointed. True or not true? They serve masters. In this country, we don't have clear separation of powers. And I'd like to even be stated that, to even be quoted that, the moment we allow politics to affect even our private sector and our public institution in depth, is when we will never reach our targets. KRA will continue singing of how probably they'll never reach their targets, or we've reached our target this year, next financial year we'll not reach our targets. But we all know it boils down to corruption, to serving masters in power, and the people who appointed them.
Okay. Exactly. Steve, what should be done to create jobs in
Trevor, can I answer, please?
Hold on 1 second.
You have not given me time to speak.
Ruth?
You have not given me time to speak.
There's a reason why there's a moderator, Ruth.
You have not given me time
Let's
to speak.
not contest this for now. Steve, what needs to be done to create jobs? I'll come to you with that same question, and you focus on what needs to be done to create jobs.
Since independence, no administration has actually kept its pledge to the youth. From 1963 to now, none. And it's very difficult to actually segment the youth alone and actually deliver promise to them, because now the women will also want something, and then the men, and then the people with disability. So it's very difficult to actually promise the youth and actually deliver. 4 cabinet positions will only benefit the 4 individuals, not the youth of the country. Creating jobs is not easy. It's not the role of government to create jobs. So when a politician like the second man in command says, I will give 2 million jobs, or the former prime minister saying, I will give 4 million jobs, it's actually a lie, because it is not their role to create jobs. It's their role to create the right environment for entrepreneurs and business owners and job creators to actually thrive and create jobs. And the only way to have an honest solution, and the only way to be able to actually create the right environment, is to change the parliament, because parliament is what creates right or wrong environments for businesses. A good parliament will actually ensure that we have tax reforms. A good parliament will make sure that it's easier for young people to access credit. to be able to fund the businesses. A good parliament will ensure that sessional papers like the one she was talking about are actually implemented. Sessional paper 16 of 1976 actually segmented the country into various parts in terms of agriculture and manufacturing. If we did implement that, it will actually be very easy to create jobs for young people. Creating jobs will come from manufacturing, creating jobs will come from agro-processing, creating jobs will come from production, creating jobs will come from logistics. These are the core basics aspect of the economy. Okay. And that is where now technology will actually come in with the service industry. People being able, if I'm a young person and I'm on TikTok or Twitter and I'm an influencer, what am I going to influence? I'm going to influence a product that's actually been manufactured in the country. I'm going to influence a farm or a ranch somewhere in the country, or I'm going to actually influence a hotel. So we cannot be influencers or content creators without manufacturing, without agriculture. And the only way we can be able to bring this change, it doesn't matter how many of us will join any movement. We need the right parliament. And the right parliament comes from the young people going to the ballot box and voting.
Okay. Ruth, direct question. What needs to be done to create jobs? We keep talking about this, but what the young people you're talking to,
what needs to be done by the young people?
What are they saying? No. What are they suggesting? What needs to be put in place for the jobs to be created?
Can I be honest, Trevor?
Yeah.
I did an interview on, I guess, Monday. And that, for me, was to officially mark my last political analysis interview. Why do I say so? And I will say so authoritatively on this station, Citizen TV. This is my last political analysis. You will not hear from me on matters politics again. Why do I say so, Trevor? For a very long period of time, I, Ruth Ambogo, have suggested so many policy changes that have been adopted by government. And I know that nobody wants to hear this, because out there is a narrative that is being pushed by these very young people seated here, that I am just but an appointee serving a master. I am not an appointee serving a master, Trevor Ombija. I got to that office by merit. For a long period of time, I have been denied government appointment positions. Guess why? Because I did not have a degree. There was a narrative that was being peddled by a particular group of young people who have formed themselves into a movement. And what they do, they sit down, they analyze cabinet positions, they give to themselves. I will be very categorical and tell you that all the CASs who have been appointed to office, this is my last statement, all the CASs who hold offices as of this morning are illegally sitting in those offices. Why? Most of them were appointed as girlfriends of cabinet secretaries. Most of them are in clandestine relationships with senior politicians in this country. And if you want me to list them, I will. Daughters of Raila was formed in 2017 as a lobby group that pushed for Raila Odinga's candidature. We were not formed before the first election. We were formed in the second election, when what we were pushing for was to get to Canaan. This is my last political statement, and this is what I am saying. Until the generation of today realizes that, first of all, authority comes from God. That number two, when you are given authority, anybody who stands up, a leader who stands up and walks on podiums of churches and says he is the chosen one, is not the chosen one, because only God knows who he appoints to be a leader. I will be very biblical on this issue, because we cannot separate church, politics, and God. Why? When I was in law school at Strathmore University, where I am graduating on the 5th of December with honors, first class, with honors, LLB honors, I know that there are people who've been peddling rumors that I do not have a degree. I completed my degree at Strathmore University in 2017.
Ruth, you're not
I have listened to me, Trevor Ombija.
You're
I
not
will
answering
finish.
my question, Ruth.
Listen to me, Trevor Ombija. This generation,
so
this is how we will create jobs. This is how we will create jobs.
So when
it
I
is
ask
your
you a
show,
question, you
and I will say one statement, and I will stand up, and I will leave, and I will never make any political commentary.
All right,
this
let's
is
take
how
a
we
quick
resolve
break
this.
now.
Young
You're allowed
people
to
need
let
to
out.
stop
You're allowed to
being
leave. It is
rebellious.
Take a break now, Ibra. Thank you.
Yeah.